Hello, welcome to week 2 of term 2. As always, if you're watching this video, it's because you were absent on our synchronous day, or one of them, one or both. This week is the week of Thanksgiving, so we only had one synchronous day and one asynchronous day. So let me show you what we did in our Zoom call. As always, I know it's kind of cheesy because it's Thanksgiving, but I think it's a good idea to reflect on something that you're grateful for because, especially this year with all that's going on, we need to remind ourselves of what's good in our lives. So you can think on that and include this in your slide. And then for our schedule this week, in terms of what we have going on, we have Argument Google Slides Part 2, which is what you're viewing, and then you have absolutely nothing for your asynchronous day. I want you to enjoy your break. I know that the holiday can consist of many different things, but it's time away from school, and I want you to enjoy it and not have the burden of extra homework. So you have nothing for asynchronous work. And our slides should be something that are easily completed in our Zoom call. Obviously, if you're viewing this, you were absent. It should probably take maybe 10 minutes. It's very good, very simple. So let's get started. So let's look back at what we learned last week. Last week was our intro into our argumentative writing unit. We went over a couple of key vocabulary terms. We learned that an argument is a group of statements that lead to a conclusion, and that those statements can be different. You can have claims, counterclaims, evidence, elaboration. They should all look different, and when you put them all together within the argument, you create an argument and you have a conclusion at the very end, that main idea. And then we also looked at how we used an analogy of hot and cold. Argument is cold. It's made up of passionless sentences that lead to a passionless conclusion. But when you use persuasion, you're using techniques and tricks and tools to make other people care about that cold argument. And an example of that is through marketing, advertising, that the argument just simply shows that there is a product, but persuasion is trying to get other people to buy that product. And then we looked at syllogisms, had a lot of fun with that, looking at some very common templates with the patterns and trying to identify in some examples the different parts of the language. And we learned that syllogisms are simply statements that force us to accept a conclusion. So it's the building blocks of an argument at its core. Now, for this week, we looked at syllogisms, we looked at some main vocabulary words, but now we need to go beyond that because as we get further into a unit, we just have to keep adding layers to it. So we're going to go beyond just simple 3-line syllogisms because your ultimate goal and your project for the end of this unit specifically is going to be to create an argument and to use persuasive writing in a way that's much more complex than just 3-line syllogisms. So, as a refresher, syllogisms help us determine an argument's validity. It's looking at an argument at its core and seeing, is this valid? Is this logical? Does this make sense according to just logic and reason and what we can determine based off the language? So that was what we looked at last week. This week, we're looking at evidence because evidence helps us determine an argument's credibility. So you can have an argument, just because you have an argument that's valid, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best argument for whatever point you're trying to make or whatever idea or claim you have. So the syllogisms, again, are connected to validity. Is it logical? Is it valid? Evidence helps us see, is it really credible? Is this the best way to present this information? So then, what exactly is evidence? I'm sure I would bet that you have heard teachers in the past say, you need to back this up with evidence. You need to show me evidence in the text. You need to provide strong evidence. Okay, but what does that mean? What is evidence? How do we know what that is and how to find it and how to provide it? So, this is what evidence is. If you had a statement without evidence, that is called an assertion. So if you were to make a claim and not provide any evidence, you would just be making an assertion, and that's not what our goal is. Our goal is to provide statements with evidence, because evidence is simply support. If you're looking at what it does, it backs up your argument, it strengthens it, it makes it airtight, and especially if you're trying to be more on the persuasive side, it's going to be kind of the tipping scale that will convince people to agree with you or buy your product or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So, in essence, if you were to sum it up in one word, evidence is simply support. So what does it look like if we know how to define it? It looks like this. We're going to go through 5 different types of evidence: facts, numbers, quotes, examples, and analogies. When you are, specifically in this unit, but beyond this as well, when you're doing any type of argumentative writing or persuasive writing, and your teacher asks you for evidence, this is what you need to think about: facts, numbers, quotes, and examples and analogies. These are the 5 categories that you can choose from. Not every argument has to have all 5. I would say a very strong argument and well-supported argument will have all 5. But let's take a look at what each of these is, what some examples are, and how we would define them. So first, we have facts. These are statements that are actual, verifiable, and indisputable. You can think about some classic examples. All men are mortal. Humans need water to survive. Electrons have a negative charge. The sun sets in the west. These are things that we just know without a shadow of doubt are true. If you look at these pictures, you can kind of think about, like, scientifically what we've been able to prove true, because obviously within the world of science there are still a lot of theories that haven't been proven true, but there are some things that are just, you can't budge them. That is the way that it is. Like humans, it's been proven humans need water to survive. They can last a significant amount of time without it, but they need it to live. So when you're thinking about facts, think about things that you really have to avoid bias here. It just needs to be something that is absolutely solid, accepted globally. And something else to be aware of is that, think about the classic idea of the world is flat. A long time ago, people thought that the world was flat, and that has been proven untrue. That's incorrect. So there are certain facts that if you kind of take them at face value, they're not actually true, or over time they've become or been proven to be not true. So anyway, you just need to look at these with a magnifying glass and decide, is this something that is globally accepted over thousands of generations? I always think about these kind of scientific examples, things that have been proven true and have not changed. And then we have numbers, statistics, surveys, or any type of measurement. Basically, I want you to hold fast to this rule. If you see a number, it falls in this category. So Salem's population reached this number in 2018. 5 to 10% of people globally have dyslexia. Stranger Things season 3 had 64 million views on Netflix. These are all numbers. This is evidence. I would say that numbers are a very popular way to provide evidence in an argument, but I want to warn you that sometimes numbers can be deceiving. And statistics, if you haven't learned this in a math class, you will at some point. Statistics can be shown in a way that kind of is like not accurate, in a way that kind of bends to people's bias or whatever it is that they're trying to present or get people to think. So just know that with statistics specifically, you need to really take it with a grain of salt. And I would just always encourage you to never create an argument or persuasive argument that's founded solely on numbers, because that can get a little wobbly. But it is a very popular one. And like I said, if you see a number, it falls in this category. No questions about that. So then we have quotes. This is something that English teachers really love. Quotes are, you know what they are. They're an exact repetition of words, or you could also think of it as the exact words of an expert. So this would be an example. On page 32, Trevor Noah said, "Just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. There are no secrets about the world of nature. There are secrets about thoughts and intentions of men." J. Robert Oppenheimer. Difference here would be quotes. You're actually using literal quotation marks and you're directly quoting word for word words from somebody else, and you're providing that source. This is different than a paraphrase, because paraphrase is taking something like this and putting it into your own words, still citing that source, but putting it into your own words. So that would mean quotation marks wouldn't be necessary. But quotes, direct quotes, is something that you can use for evidence. And on this second line here, the exact words of an expert, when you are using quotes in your argument, you need to make sure that your expert is credible, because unfortunately in the world that we live in, sometimes experts can be bought. People can literally be swayed with money and tell you one thing, but it's actually not what they believe. They're just doing it because they got a paycheck. So just be aware of that. So that's something to consider, making sure that your expert is actually credible and not biased. And then we have our fourth one, which is examples. These are, just think about it like observations. They could be anecdotes. Anecdotes would mean a story, items in a text, or maybe results of an experiment if you're talking about something in the science and math field. So an experiment result example would be, we dropped 2 Mentos in a 2-liter bottle of Coke and foam went everywhere. That's an observation from an experiment. Michael told the story of his time in prison. He said blank. That's something found in a text, or that's a story that someone is sharing. We know she is bad-tempered because one time in chapter 2 she threw her dinner plate, blah blah blah. This is an example, something found in a text. You're showing what chapter you got it from. So examples, they have some variety to them, and they are very helpful in providing some support and some elaboration and evidence in your writing. And then lastly, we have analogies. So these would be comparisons. You could absolutely think about these and even look for it. Similes and metaphors, what we studied in our poetry unit. Similes and metaphors are comparing two things, and it's showing just how related or similar or maybe different they are. So this would be an example. Artificial intelligence today is like the atomic bomb in 1945, groundbreaking and very important. So you're describing two things, and you're saying that they are similar, and you're giving descriptors. The TV show New Girl is like the modern version of Friends because, so you're again describing how they're similar and then providing some elaboration. You're explaining why they are similar. So again, if this one is tricky for you to identify, I would look for a simile or a metaphor using as or like, or are, any version of to be. This would show you an analogy pretty quickly. Okay, this is what we're going to do to try to make sure we have a solid understanding of what types of evidence exist and identifying them in examples. So what you're going to do is you're going to look through these examples and you're going to copy and paste them into the graph that I'm going to show you next. But let me show your first set of examples. You're going to have 2 examples of each category. And so right now they're going to be mixed up in order, and you have to identify which one is which. What is war like? My grandfather was in the South Pacific War during World War II and tells this story. Breathing exhaust fumes while stuck in traffic jam is like breathing in secondhand smoke. Humans need water to survive. Burt Macklin said there's only one man for the job. The average salesperson made $1,000 last month. So what you will do is you're going to copy and paste once you've figured out which one belongs to which category, and you're just going to copy and paste it into the chart. And then you're going to do the same thing with our other set of examples. There are 50 states in the United States of America. The sun rises in the east. LeBron James is like the new Michael Jordan. At the end of chapter 1, the Mandalorian finds the child. In chapter 2, the Mandalorian leaves with the child, and Nick Miller said, "It's perfectly fine to watch TV all day." So go ahead and look through both of these slides, and there will be 2 examples for each category. So you should have 2 examples in each category. Go ahead and do that. All right. So let's look at which one belongs in which category. Humans need water to survive. The sun rises in the east. These are facts that have been accepted for so long. Numbers: the average salesperson made $1,000 last month. This one might have tricked you. There are 50 states in the United States of America. Yes, this is a fact, but we have a number here. Even though it doesn't look like this, like actual numbers, it's written out. There are 50 states. This is a number. Like I said, if you see a number, that means it's in the number category. No questions asked. Quotes, you can obviously identify those with the quotation marks and who said what, Burt Macklin, Nick Miller. Examples: what was war like? My grandfather was in the South Pacific War and tells this story. So an example could be a story, or it could be something you found in a text. In chapter 1, blah, 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 blah. Analogies: breathing exhaust fumes while stuck in traffic jam is like, remember, similes, metaphors, breathing in secondhand smoke. LeBron James is like, again, the new Michael Jordan. So this is what you are going to contribute to your slides and turn in. When you are completely finished, you can submit them. And again, no work for Thanksgiving because I want you to enjoy your holiday. So I will see you next week for week 3.